Thanks for your company. Now, Chairman of the National Peace Council, Reverend Professor Emmanuel Asante, is worried many corrupt deals and negative practices in the country are done by people who profess to be Christians. Speaking at the climax of the 60th anniversary of the Church of Christ spiritual movement in Cape Coast, the Chairman of the Peace Council says the attitude of the Christian community must change for the country to feel the real impact of Christ. Richard Kojonyako has more.
The Church of Christ spiritual movement climaxed its 60th anniversary with a mammoth Thanksgiving in Cape Coast. It was all joy for the church as the movement in the entire country congregated in Cape Coast. Chairman of the National Peace Council, Reverend Professor Emmanuel Asante, was full of praise for the church in its achievement of this milestone. He was concerned about how the country is populated by Christians, yet the crime wave and other related corrupt activities continue to go up.
In spite of the fact that we claim to be Christians, the police have a very hard time. And the people they are dealing with are not just non-Christians, but people who claim to be Christians. The problems of our country is about 70% Christian problems. And it's all because we pay lip service to Christ Jesus. We have not truly allowed him to come into our lives, to transform our lives so that we can live for him. And what I'm saying, I'm not just saying to just church members, I'm saying I'm sorry to even those of us who call ourselves pastors, clergymen, men of God.
The National Peace Council chair also admonished Christians to be wary of pastors that preach about themselves rather than the gospel of Jesus Christ.
We are living at a time when we have so many so-called men of God who preach themselves. A lot of the troubles we have had in our churches, as the history we heard confirmed, is that when we push Christ aside and we put ourselves at the center of things, confusion comes.
The National Apostolic Head of the Church of Christ spiritual movement, Most Reverend Engineer Dr. Dan Markin, on his part appealed to Ghanaians to rally their resources and prayers behind government to move the country forward. He was worried politics is fast dividing the Christian community in Ghana.
Unfortunately, recently, because of partisan politics, you have even ministers and men of God who are ministers for a particular party. And I want to tell you that God abhors that. God says that we should represent him. So today, one party may be in government, tomorrow another party may be in government, but they are all instituted by God. And as children of God, you must be on the side of your father and not on the side of your earthly political party. Bible says we should seek the kingdom of God and its righteousness. He didn't say that we should seek our political parties. Yes, political parties may be good and nice, but as soon as by our constitution we go to election and somebody is chosen by the majority, from that moment we must concentrate about governance of our country. As Christians, we must pray for the one that has been chosen by the majority. Unfortunately, from the day the person is chosen, we start partisan politics again when he has not governed.
Richard Kojonyako, Joy News, Cape Coast.
We stay on corruption issues. For the fear of being tagged, civil society organizations are failing to hold government accountable and speak openly about corruption-related offences. That's according to the former Chief Executive Officer of the Savannah Accelerated Development Agency, SADA, Mr. Charles Abugri. Now, his remarks stems from concerns bordering on the lack of tolerance for corporate social organizations and individuals that openly criticize government over corruption in the public sector. He is therefore urging civil society groups to be bold in their fight against corruption. Henry Kwesu-Bedu has more in the following report.
Corruption is seriously affecting Ghana's development. And despite efforts by many civil society organizations to fight corruption, the canker continues to rip the nation of the critical resources needed for development. Former Chief Executive Officer of the Savannah Accelerated Development Agency, SADA, Charles Abugri, said this at the launch of a Star Ghana Foundation.
First and foremost, it takes a bit of courage to take on power. You know, the individual's reputation is on the line, your organization's reputation is on the line. So this discourages the efforts by civil society to fight corruption through the legal means, through the court means. And so ultimately people just make noise. But if you cannot bring people to account ultimately through the courts, then your fight against corruption will never have a bite. So yes, this is a serious problem, for civil society. But I guess the way civil society has to continue with this is to understand that when you take on a powerful case, you need allies within civil society, you need allies in faith-based organizations, you need allies in community group. You have to invest as much in mobilizing the society behind your case as you do in prosecuting your case. In both cases, not cheap.
Programs Director of Star Ghana, Ibrahim Tanko Amidu, speaking at the same event, said successive governments have almost neglected financing civil society organizations in this fight.
I don't think so. Each government has come promising to work with civil society, with citizens, but it gets to a certain point where the direction changes and you don't see the kind of support that you require. There might be lip service.
The Star Ghana Foundation is willing to create platforms for ordinary people, particularly the most marginalized in society, to become active citizens who demand positive change in their lives and communities.
Let's move on to other issues now. Mortuary workers are meeting government over poor working conditions. The aggrieved group of health workers have threatened to embark on an indefinite strike on November 20 if government fails to heed their demands. One of them has been speaking to Joy News' Maxwell Agbagba on the current state of their work, which they describe as inhumane.
We don't have enough equipment in the mortuary to work with. Because the mortuary has its own set of tools. The trollers, the Wellington boots, the protective clothing, the mask. It's a whole set of things. But they are all lacking everywhere. And they are expecting us to just work. But we are making money, for the hospitals and for government. So we think that some of them are working long hours, for instance, 24 hours. He works every day. He doesn't.
Why does that happen 24 hours?
Well, it's because some people are sitting somewhere and they are dictating how many hours you should work instead of going by the laid down laws of this country.
Is it for lack of personnel? What exactly?
Well, I don't want to. I think this question should be directed to those who are involved in it. Those who are involved in a certain action know why they are doing it, and they are doing it with impunity. That's our concern. I mean, the laws are clear. If those we have charged governors decide to break the laws, what about the mortuary attendant? If he breaks the law, you fire him. For instance, he does not come to work without permission. You will fire him. But you are asking him to work 24 hours. You don't pay him any overtime. He comes to work on public holidays. You don't pay him overtime. He comes to work on weekends, Saturdays, Sundays, and night. You don't give him time to rest. What type of practice is this?
Now, following their threats to embark on an industrial action, the Health Ministry has invited them over to look into their concerns. Richard Jordan is a member of the Mortuary Workers Association and was billed to speak to us, but we want to believe they're still locked up in that meeting, and we'll bring you all the updates you need to know when we're able to reach them. Now, 69.2% of adults living with diabetes in Africa are unaware of their condition. That's according to a survey conducted by the International Diabetes Federation in 2017. Now, this statistics is worrying because though there is no cure for diabetes, the disease can be managed and when detected early. Now, as part of efforts to raise awareness about the disease, the Raised Diabetes Endocrine Metabolic Society of Ghana organized a free screening session for traders at the Nima market. Dr. Josephine Akpalu, an endocrinologist, revealed out of the 40 people they screened, 15 of them were detected, or 15 of them had worrying sugar levels.
In Ghana, we don't have a nationwide survey that will tell us the exact numbers, but we've had some community surveys which have been done in the population by some of our professors. And one of them that quickly comes to mind is one that was done by our professor, Prof. Amwa, and it showed that about 6.8% of the population, general population, had diabetes. And that was done almost 10 years ago. So currently, I believe that the levels will be much higher. With those who have diabetes, we can say that about 6.8% of them may have diabetes. In the whole world, if we use as a federation, we call International Diabetes Federation, they have done worldwide surveys and noticed that generally in the whole world, for every one diabetic patient that we have, there's another one in the community who has it but doesn't know. But when it comes to Africa, for every one person who has diabetes, there are 2 more people in the community who have it and are not aware. So these are ways in which we can, screening is a way in which we can identify those people who don't know that they have diabetes, because it's one of the conditions that when you pick it up early and you control it, it prevents you from having the sequelae or the complications that we are so much afraid of.
A beneficiary of the screening program spoke to Joy News after she met the health professionals.
Almost sugar, am I any BP? And sugar ni BP no.
It's in patch sugar ni BP we no why you be that?
Aye.
But time we screen now mu catch us DNA ye.
Oh, can say okay, so check a kakra me call me doctor no and check mommy.
It's in Crawford show Sesiano, DNA na ube catch mu Sesia ye world and then your world diabetes they na ube catch
make I say the almost see. If said the almost normal boy. If say oko baby na ko be tua. So we no ye free amaye. Enti ye do almost see. So mo be amaye free. Enti yen si we ni je honti ye nyina ye.
Diabetes we ye sugar na di yare we ba. We ye mother. Inti den na ube advising Crawford omu ye maame a omu ye aduane na omu di sugar bebre agu mama omu nkola no.
The American say sugar bebre no enye maye. Na kabo no so aye aduane. Inti wo say yen yi sugar no free ho. E say kabo no kodi a e be kwa kodane sugar. Inti wo say sa de na ade ni nyina yen yi free abrabom na yen ko yenim na ye kwa wa maye.
So basically what she said, I asked her how the process was for her when she went for the screening, and she said it was normal. She also said that it's not the first time she's been screened, so for her she's used to this process. She says she's been advised to go for medical checkup every now and then because they found out that she's okay, but there's a need to monitor her sugar levels. She's also advising every mother out there to make sure that when they're serving their children with any meal, make sure you cut down on the carbohydrates and even the sugar levels so as to make sure your children are healthy.
Still on diabetes awareness, did you know that the cost of insulin injection and daily monitoring of diabetics can consume as much as half of the family's average disposable income? What about a patient whose families in severe cases are unable to afford or even access basic necessities to fight their condition? Now here are some proposed solutions: prevention, support and taxation. As we commemorate World Diabetes Day, we are putting the spotlight on how best families can manage the increasing spate of diabetic cases and the roles that the bigger family, that's the government, can play. Kenneth Awotritako has more on the following report.
Diabetes is a group of metabolic disorders in which there are high blood sugar levels over a prolonged period. Symptoms include unintended weight loss, increased urination, increased thirst, and increased hunger. In Ghana alone, over 8,300 people died of the disease in 2013 and another 5,000 in 2015. The theme for this year's World Diabetes Day, the family and diabetes, has brought to the fore the need to create a support system for those affected by diabetes. According to Deputy Head of Care at Diabetes UK, Douglas 24, a very strong family foundation is an essential step in improving the health of such patients.
Because we are not doing we are doing almost nothing, which for me is not an option. So for example, if somebody has type 1 diabetes, how they manage their diabetes is that every time that they are going to eat, for example, they are going to eat fufu, they have to count how much carbohydrate is in the fufu. That's a huge task. For me, the theme for this year's Diabetes Week is that we are going to raise awareness of diabetes first. And the reason for that is, if you have a family member who has diabetes, your risk of developing diabetes increases.
According to the International Diabetes Federation, an estimated 382 million people have diabetes worldwide, with projections to 300 million by 2025, with majority of this increase to come from developing countries. While Ghana's Health Ministry has taken certain steps to tackle the disease, the specialist dietitian believes the efforts should be channeled at preventive measures.
First of all, the government has to make some resources available to raise awareness of type 2 diabetes, but also think of some policies to help people live healthier lives. Without insulin, people with type 1 have about a few weeks, months maximum to live.
So as we commemorate the World Diabetes Day, the responsibility of a family remains essential in curbing the disease. Kenneth Awatwe-Darko's report for Joy News.
You're watching Joy News. Today, still to come, the Ghana Education Service has admitted to Joy News that over the years, less and less time has been devoted to physical education and sports at all levels of the academic ladder. And on the international front, the UN says it's going to lift 2009 sanction on Eritrea. Do stay for these details and more. Thanks for staying here on Joy News today with me, Benis Abubedulansa. Now, the Ghana Education Service has admitted to Joy News that over the years, less and less time has been devoted to physical education and sports at all levels of the academic ladder. This has contributed to a whole generation of physically unfit growing children and young adolescents. As part of work on his documentary, All to Play For, Joy News' Gary L. Smith has been speaking to teachers from the primary to the university level. Now, they are complaining that at the teacher training colleges, there is a clear contempt or attempt to relegate the physical education course to the background. One of such teachers who spoke to us is Nasiru Idrisu of the Kotobabi 2 JHS.
Even at times, even when you're in the school and some teachers even seeing the children going out, when it is time for PE, they will tell them to come back into the classroom. Even some teachers themselves don't like it because they see it to be waste of time. So at times I ask myself, at the training college, we were taking through all that, we even wrote exams on. But here we want to implement it, then hey, some teachers don't like it. So it has been a challenge.
Well, we followed up with the Ghana Education Service, and Director of Physical Education Unit, Emmanuel Domenya, admits that this indeed is happening.
GES wants to develop the child holistically, physically fit child, mentally brilliant. So we combine physical activity, sports with education. People are gearing more towards academics than physical education and sports, which is unfortunate though. Because gone are those days when right through the primary, JHS, even those days, primary, middle school, secondary school, sixth form, etc., sports was on the high side. But of late, I must say, it's more geared towards academic works.
Away from that, the Director General of German International Broadcaster DW, Peter Limburg, has described China's soaring presence in the African media landscape as a challenge. Now, China has launched a development strategy dubbed the Belt and Road Initiative, which involves infrastructure development and investment in countries in Europe, Asia and Africa. In Ghana, the Chinese are undertaking various projects, including expanding Ghana's digital terrestrial television, that's the DTT platform. Peter Limburg says Ghana's private sector must wake up and innovate to build the continent. He was speaking during a visit to the multimedia group.
Our idea is to have more collaboration and co-production.
In fact, the view is that China, for example, is increasing its footprint in Africa. Is that not a threat to the interests of Europe and, for that matter, Germany?
I would say it's a challenge for Germany, and it's a good example that we should do more in investing in Africa. And I think what Germany was initiating with the compact with Africa recently is a sign that German politics.
Well, the multimedia group has been in partnership with the German broadcaster DW for 9 years. And General Manager of Multi-TV, Santok Singh, says DW must increase content from Africa.
The issue has always been that what are the common interests? It's like for you and also for us. So it's like things that we need to look from both sides, because it's like not only from DW side in terms of Germany interest, but also ours. And to a certain extent, I think the Africa issue is quite similar if you cut across whether West Africa, East Africa. So it's something that we will continue, because I know doing just content just for Ghana may not be sufficient or efficient, but how we can also use the same sort of like a theme of topics and all that, but cut across, and also the other countries can also enjoy at the same time, and we can share.
You're watching Joy News Today. Up next is Business News with Odilia in Tiamoa.